You have no idea what you just started.
She was dared to kiss the masked stranger at the royal ball. She did, unaware he was the most feared Duke of the North. 3 seconds. That's how long the kiss lasted. How long it took for Sienna Crawford to press her lips against the masked stranger's mouth, taste copper and expensive whiskey, and realize she had just made the worst mistake of her life. The royal ball didn't roar anymore. It held its breath. She pulled back, heart hammering, expecting laughter from her friends or maybe shock. Instead, she found something far more dangerous: recognition. Brandon Lewis's eyes locked onto hers like a predator finding prey, dark and unreadable, and absolutely certain. He was massive, not in the decorative way of noblemen who posed for portraits, but in the way of men who broke kingdoms for a living. His shoulders filled the space between them. His presence swallowed the light. The tattoos crawling up his neck disappeared beneath the collar of a uniform too decorated for anyone but royalty. And his hands. God. His hands rested at his sides like weapons waiting to be drawn. "You taste reckless," he said, voice low and even, like he was noting something he'd use against her later. Sienna swallowed. Her throat felt tight. "It was just a dare," she whispered. "Just," he repeated, testing the weight of the word. Then he leaned closer. "You have no idea what you just started. If you're ready for more stories where the unexpected happens, where the forgotten rise, and where the underdogs turn the game around, make sure to hit that subscribe button now. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, drop a comment below, let me know where you're watching from and what's on your mind. Your thoughts are always welcome here, and I'd love to hear your take on tonight's story. Don't forget to like, share, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment of the drama, the revenge, and the secrets waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to the family. Now, let's dive in. The ballroom around them kept moving. Crystal glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loud near the orchestra. A woman in emerald silk twirled past, but in their small pocket of space, time felt suspended. Brandon finally stepped back, giving her room to breathe, though his eyes never left hers. "You shouldn't let people push you into things," he said, his voice carrying an edge that made her spine straighten. "I wanted to," Sienna heard herself say, lifting her chin in defiance she didn't quite feel. That earned her something new, not a smile. Interest. He studied her for another long moment, and she studied him back. The hard line of his jaw. The way his military decorations caught the chandelier light. The small scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him look more dangerous instead of less. Then he turned and walked away, his cape sweeping behind him like a shadow, leaving her standing there with trembling hands and a racing heart. Sienna didn't wait. She turned and walked back to her friends, forcing her legs to move normally, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Behind her, she felt his gaze like a brand between her shoulder blades. Margot was already talking before Sienna reached their table. "Oh my God, what did he say? Did he threaten you?" "That was insane, Sienna. His guards almost—" "Nothing happened," Sienna cut in, reaching for her champagne with a hand that shook just slightly. "It was fine." "Fine?" Elise's eyebrows shot up. "Girl, you kissed the most feared man in this kingdom, and he looked at you like he was deciding whether to destroy you or keep you." Sienna laughed, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. She drained half her glass. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" Elise leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Because I'm pretty sure I just watched a wolf mark his territory." "It was 3 seconds," Sienna said firmly. "And now it's over." Except it wasn't. She knew it wasn't. Because even as she tried to focus on her friends, tried to lose herself in the music and the champagne and the glittering crowd, she could feel him. Every time she glanced toward the elevated platform where the nobility sat, he was there, sitting in the same position, watching, not staring, not leering, just aware. tracking her movements with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world. An hour passed, then another. Sienna danced with minor lords, smiled at conversations she didn't care about, did everything she could to prove to herself that the kiss meant nothing. But when she excused herself to find the powder room, she found him waiting in the corridor. Jesus. Sienna pressed a hand to her chest, her heart lurching. You scared me. Brandon stood with his back against the marble wall, arms crossed, looking like he'd been there for hours instead of seconds. Up close, away from the chandelier lighting, she could see him more clearly. The precise cut of his dark hair, the way his uniform fit across his chest and shoulders like it had been made specifically for him. The coldness in his eyes that suggested he didn't scare easily, or at all. That was the point, he said. Sienna straightened, trying to reclaim some of the confidence she'd felt when this was all just a dare. Are you following me? You kissed me in my territory, he said, like that explained everything. Maybe it did. Your territory. This is the royal palace, and I'm a duke. Everything north of the capital belongs to me. This ball is just politics. Something cold slithered down Sienna's spine. She glanced back toward the ballroom, suddenly aware of how empty this corridor was, how the music covered any sound. Look, I'm sorry if I offended you. It really was just a dare. I know. He pushed off the wall and she fought the urge to step back. But you chose me. Out of everyone in that room, your friends pointed at me and you said yes. You were the most serious-looking man there. It was funnier that way. Funnier, he repeated. And this time, there was something that might have been amusement in his voice. Might have been. You have no survival instincts. Excuse me? The man you kissed, Brandon said, moving closer, was in the middle of a conversation about border executions. The man you kissed has 17 names on his record. The man you kissed controls half the northern operations and is currently being watched by the Crown's intelligence division. Sienna's breath caught. And you walked up to me, he continued, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. Put your hands on my uniform, pulled me down, and kissed me like you had every right to. He was close now, close enough that she could smell him, something expensive and clean beneath the faint scent of gunpowder. That kind of confidence, he said softly, is either impressive or suicidal. I haven't decided which yet. I'm just a socialite, Sienna whispered. I plan parties and manage reputations. I'm nobody. Brandon's hand came up and she flinched, but he only brushed his thumb across her lower lip. So gently she barely felt it. You're not nobody, he said. Not anymore. Then he stepped back, adjusting his gloves like they'd been discussing the weather. Go back to your friends. Finish your evening. But understand something, Sienna Crawford. Her name in his mouth sent chills racing down her arms. How did he know her name? You walked into my world tonight. Leaving isn't as simple as walking back out. Sienna returned to the ballroom on autopilot, smiling and nodding at whatever Margot and Elise were saying, but not really hearing them. Her eyes kept drifting to the Duke's platform, to the man who'd just turned her entire night sideways. 2 days later, Sienna sat in her apartment, staring at the letter that had been delivered by a uniformed guard that morning. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind used for official royal correspondence. Miss Crawford, your presence is required at the Northern Estate tomorrow at noon. A carriage will collect you. This is not a request. Le. Her hands trembled as she read it again. And again. This had to be about the kiss. Some kind of punishment for her audacity. Maybe he'd report her to the authorities for inappropriate conduct at a royal function. But when the black carriage arrived the next day and took her through the city, past the walls, and into the countryside where the Duke's estate sprawled across the hills like a fortress, Sienna realized this was something else entirely. The estate was massive. Dark stone, high walls, guards at every entrance. She was led through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced men and women, all with the same dark eyes as Brandon, until she reached a study that smelled of leather and smoke. Brandon sat behind a desk, papers spread before him, still wearing his uniform though it was past midday. "Sit," he said without looking up. Sienna sought. He continued reading for another minute, making notes with a fountain pen, before finally setting the papers aside and meeting her eyes. "Do you know why you're here? To apologize? To be punished?" "Neither." He leaned back in his chair. "You're here because you owe me." Sienna blinked. "I don't owe you anything." Brandon opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. He slid it across the desk. Sienna opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents, financial records, loan agreements, all bearing the signature of Marcus Webb, her business partner. "Marcus borrowed money 3 years ago," Brandon said, his voice matter-of-fact. $200,000. He used your company as collateral. He's been making payments, but last month he stopped. He disappeared, actually. Left the country with someone else's wife, and a bag of cash that wasn't his. Sienna's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. Marcus wouldn't." "Marcus did. And now the debt transfers to you. As the remaining partner, you're legally responsible. I didn't sign anything. I didn't agree to this. Your name is on the company registration. That's agreement enough." He pulled out another document. "You have 2 options. Pay me $200,000 by the end of the month, or work for me until the debt is cleared." "Work for you doing what?" "What you're good at. Managing reputations, cleaning up messes, making problems disappear." He watched her carefully. "I have many problems that need disappearing." Sienna's throat felt tight. "And if I refuse, then I take everything. Your company, your apartment, your accounts, and I make sure no one in this kingdom ever hires you again." The room felt smaller, the air thinner. "Why me?" she whispered. "You could hire anyone. Because you kissed me in front of 300 people and didn't flinch. Because you walked into danger without thinking twice. Because I've been watching you for 6 months, Sienna Crawford, and I know exactly what you're capable of." 6 months. You've been watching me? Due diligence. Marcus mentioned his partner was excellent at making scandals vanish. I needed to see if that was true. He stood, buttoning his jacket. "It is. You've covered up affairs, embezzlements, and at least one suspicious death for your clients. You're good at keeping secrets. I need someone who's good at keeping secrets." Sienna felt sick. Everything she'd worked for, every careful step she'd taken to build her reputation, and it all came down to Marcus's greed. "When do I start?" she asked quietly. "Now." Brandon walked to a cabinet and pulled out a garment bag. He laid it across the chair beside her. "There's a gala tonight. Northern lords and their families. Someone has been spreading rumors about my military operations. I need you there, looking trustworthy, making me look stable. You want me to be arm candy? I want you to be a shield. People trust women like you. They think you're harmless." His eyes met hers. "You'll listen. You'll smile. You'll tell me everything you hear." Sienna stared at the garment bag. "And if I find out who's spreading the rumors, then they'll learn what happens when you cross the Duke of the North." That night, Sienna stood in front of her mirror, staring at the woman looking back. The dress Brandon had sent was midnight blue silk with silver embroidery along the bodice. The neckline was elegant. The slit up the thigh bordered on. Scandalous. She'd pulled her hair into a tight bun, applied burgundy lipstick, war paint, her mother used to call it. She looked like someone who belonged in the Duke's world. The gala was held in the estate's grand hall, chandeliers dripping crystal, tables laden with food that cost more than most people earned in a month. Sienna stood beside Brandon, her hand resting lightly on his arm, smiling at lords and ladies who eyed her with curiosity and suspicion. "Who is she?" they whispered. "Where did she come from? Is the Duke finally taking a wife?" Brandon played his part perfectly. He introduced her as his associate, his consultant, nothing more. but the way his hand settled on her lower back, the way he leaned in to whisper observations in her ear, it all suggested something deeper. It was theater, calculated, every gesture designed to send a message. 3 hours in, Sienna excused herself to the powder room. She was reapplying her lipstick when she heard voices in the adjacent sitting room. Can't prove anything. He suspects. Why else would he bring her? She's just a distraction. Pretty thing to keep him occupied while we finalize the arrangements. Sienna's hen still. The shipment arrives next week. If we can intercept it before it reaches the northern border, we can frame him for smuggling. The Crown will have no choice but to investigate. And if his guards interfere, then they die with him. Sienna's heart pounded. She finished her lipstick with steady hands, dropped it in her clutch, and walked out like she'd heard nothing. She found Brandon in the main hall, deep in conversation with an elderly lord. She touched his arm, leaned in, whispered, "We need to leave." Now. Brandon's eyes flickered to hers. He read something in her expression because he immediately made their excuses and led her out. In the carriage, Sienna told him everything. Brandon listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat back, his jaw tight. "Do you know who they were?" "Lord Garrett and someone else. I didn't recognize the second voice." "Garrett." Brandon's hand curled into a fist. "He's been a problem for months. What will you do?" "What I always do. Remove the problem." Sienna swallowed. "You mean kill him?" "I mean protect my territory. If Garrett thinks he can intercept my shipments and frame me for crimes, he's underestimated how far I'm willing to go." The carriage stopped at Sienna's building. Brandon walked her to the door. "You did well tonight," he said. "I just listened. You did more than that. You gave me a name." He studied her face in the lamplight. "Get some rest. I'll need you again tomorrow." "For what?" "To finish this." The next evening, Sienna wore a different dress. Red silk, the color of dried blood. Brandon had called it appropriate. They attended another event, this one smaller, more intimate. A dinner at Lord Garrett's estate. Sienna sat across from the Lord, smiling, making pleasant conversation about nothing, while Brandon negotiated trade agreements and border protections. Dessert had just been served when the doors burst open. A man in black, gun raised. Sienna saw the red dot on her chest before she heard the shot. Brandon moved. He shoved her sideways, and the bullet that would have killed her buried itself in his shoulder instead. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed in. Women screamed. But Sienna didn't scream. She grabbed the knife from her dessert plate, lunged across the table, and drove it into the assassin's throat before he could fire again. Blood sprayed. Hot. Wet. Real. The man collapsed. Choking. Dying. Sienna stood there, breathing hard, staring at her hands, her dress, the body. Paper didn't bleed like this. Brandon's hand closed around her wrist. "We're leaving." He dragged her out through a side door while his guards secured the room. They got into a different carriage, this one unmarked, and drove for 20 minutes into the countryside. The safe house was small. A bungalow hidden among trees. No lights. No guards. Brandon unlocked the door with one hand, his other pressed against his bleeding shoulder. Inside, he collapsed into a chair, his face pale. "First aid kit," he said, through gritted teeth. "Kitchen." Sienna moved on autopilot. She found the kit, brought it back, and knelt beside him. "I need to remove your jacket." He nodded. She peeled away the fabric, revealing the wound. The bullet had gone clean through. No major arteries, but it was still bleeding heavily. Her hands shook as she cleaned it, as she threaded the needle. "I've never done this before," she whispered. "You killed a man tonight. You can stitch a wound." She did. 12 stitches. Each one precise, even though her stomach turned with every pull of the thread. When she finished, she sat back on her heels, staring at her bloody hands. "I killed someone," she said. "You saved my life." "I killed someone," she repeated, louder this time. Brandon reached out and caught her chin, forcing her to look at him. You did what you had to do. That man was going to kill you, then me, then everyone in that room. You stopped him. Is this what your world is? Killing people? Sometimes. When there's no other choice. His thumb brushed her jaw. You're complicit now, Sienna. We both are. She should have felt horrified, ashamed. Instead, she felt numb. What happens now? Now we find out who sent him. They stayed in the safe house for 2 days. Brandon made calls, sent messages. Sienna cleaned blood from her dress and tried not to think about the man's eyes as the life drained from them. On the 3rd day, a messenger arrived. Brandon read the note, his expression hardening. What is it? Sienna asked. A name. The person who told the assassin where we'd be. Who? He looked at her. Your friend, Margot. Sienna's world tilted. No, that's not possible. Margot wouldn't. She was paid $5,000. The transaction went through 2 days before the ball. Brandon handed her the documents. Bank statements, messages, all of it damning. Sienna stared at her best friend's name on the page. Why? She whispered. Ask her yourself. They found Margot at a cafe in the city, sitting with her new designer purse and nails freshly done. Sienna sat down across from her. Brandon stood behind, silent and looming. Margot's face went white. Sienna. Why? Margot's eyes filled with tears. They said you'd be fine. They just wanted information. Where you'd be, who you'd be with. They said no one would get hurt. Someone almost died. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they'd send someone with a gun. She reached across the table. I needed the money. My rent was due. My cards were maxed out. They offered $5,000 just for a dare. Just to get you to kiss him so they'd know you were connected. A dare, Sienna repeated slowly. I'm sorry. God, Sienna. I'm so sorry. Sienna stood. She looked down at the woman she'd called her best friend for 5 years. Fresh acrylics and a designer purse, she said quietly. That's what I'm worth to you. She turned and walked out, Brandon following. Behind them, Margot sobbed into her expensive latte. In the carriage, Sienna stared out the window at the city passing by. What will you do to her? She asked. Nothing. She's not important enough to bother with. And me? Am I important enough? Brandon turned to look at her. You killed for me. You stitched me back together. You didn't run when you had the chance. His hand found hers. Yes, Sienna Crawford. You're important enough. If you're still here after all that, it shows you find the story interesting. If so, then do me this one favor. Hit subscribe on Forbidden Secret Love Chronicles. Also, drop a comment and tell me what you thought. Did Margot deserve forgiveness? Could you have done what Sienna did? I read every single comment, and your thoughts matter to me. Welcome to Forbidden Secret Love Chronicles. I'm so glad you're here. The summons came 3 days later. Not a private note. Not a quiet carriage. A public declaration delivered by the Duke's Guard in the middle of the city square where Sienna was meeting a client. Miss Crawford, you are hereby terminated from all services to the Duke of the North, effective immediately. Your association with the Northern Estate is dissolved. Do not attempt contact. The guard turned and left. Every eye in the square turned to Sienna. Her client stood. I'm sorry, Miss Crawford. I can't be associated with someone who's been publicly dismissed by a duke. You understand. Sienna stood there, humiliation burning through her chest, as whispers erupted around her. What did she do? Must have been something terrible. The Duke never dismisses anyone publicly, unless... She walked home through streets that suddenly felt hostile. By evening, 3 more clients had canceled. By morning, her business accounts had been frozen. She'd been destroyed. Professionally, socially, completely. And she had no idea why. The note came that night, slipped under her door. Trust me. Stay quiet. Stay hidden. B. Sienna crumpled the paper in her fist. Trust him? He'd just annihilated everything she'd built. But she stayed quiet, stayed in her apartment, watched through her window as people she'd once called friends crossed the street to avoid her building. 2 weeks later, she understood. A man was found dead in the river. Lord Garrett. The same man who'd hosted the dinner where the assassin had struck. The investigation revealed he'd been planning to kill the Duke and frame Sienna as an accomplice. Witnesses came forward. Documents surfaced. All of it pointed to a conspiracy that would have ended with Sienna executed for treason. But because she'd been publicly severed from the Duke, because everyone believed she'd been cast out in disgrace, the conspirators had left her alone. She wasn't worth killing if she was already ruined. Brandon had saved her life by destroying her reputation. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She sat on her floor, surrounded by canceled contracts and hateful letters, and understood that the Duke had sacrificed her public image to keep her breathing. Another note came. Northern Estate. Midnight. Use the East Gate. Shenavent. The East Gate was unguarded. She slipped through, following a path that led to a garden behind the main house. Brandon waited there, dressed in plain clothes, no uniform, no decorations, just a man in the moonlight. You made everyone think I betrayed you, Sienna said. I made everyone think you were worthless to me. There's a difference. He stepped closer. Garrett had orders to kill you the moment he eliminated me. Making you a pariah was the only way to remove the target from your back. You could have told me. If you'd known, you would have acted differently. The performance had to be real. It was real. I lost everything. No, Brandon said quietly. You lost things that can be rebuilt. You didn't lose your life. Sienna wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for the humiliation, for the isolation. But standing here, seeing the calculation behind every brutal choice, she understood. What now? She asked. Now you help me finish this. Garrett's dead, but his allies aren't. They're regrouping, planning something worse. He handed her a folder. I need you to do what you do best. Make a problem disappear. Sienna opened the folder. Inside was a photograph of a man she recognized immediately. Thomas Whitmore, her ex-suitor. The man who'd courted her 2 years ago before she'd discovered he was already engaged to someone else. Thomas works for the Crown's Intelligence Division, Brandon said. He's been feeding information to rival territories, names, locations, shipment routes. He's the mole. And you want me to what? Talk to him? I want you to stall him. He's meeting his contacts tomorrow night in the warehouse district. I need time to position my people. You keep him occupied until I'm ready. Why would he meet with me? Because you're ruined. You're desperate. You're exactly the kind of asset he'd want to recruit. Brandon's jaw tightened. He'll think he can use you against me. The warehouse district smelled like rust and rotting wood. Sienna walked through the darkness, her heels clicking against broken pavement, until she found the building marked on her map. Thomas stood inside, looking exactly as she remembered. Handsome, charming, completely hollow behind the eyes. Sienna Crawford, he said, smiling. I heard about your fall from grace. The Duke really did a number on you. He destroyed me, Sienna said, letting bitterness coat her words. Everything I built, gone. Terrible. Thomas's smile widened. But maybe I can help. I work with people who'd appreciate your skills. People who could use someone with your connections. What kind of people? The kind who are tired of the Duke's control. The kind who want to see the North under new management. He circled her slowly. You must hate him. After what he did to you. I hate what he took from me. Then help us take something from him. Information. Access. Anything that could give us an advantage. Sienna pretended to consider. She let silence stretch between them, watching Thomas's confidence grow. What's in it for me? She asked, finally. Money. Protection. A fresh start somewhere the Duke's reputation can't touch you. She was about to respond when she heard it. Footsteps. Multiple sets, Brandon's people moving into position. Thomas heard it too. His expression shifted from charming to cold in an instant. "You brought them here." "I'm just having a conversation with an old friend." Thomas lunged. His hand closed around her throat, slamming her back against a concrete pillar. "You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Sienna couldn't breathe. Her vision spotted. But she didn't fight back. She just stared at him, waiting. Brandon appeared from the shadows like death itself. He grabbed Thomas by the back of the neck and threw him away from Sienna so hard the man hit the ground and rolled. Sienna collapsed, gasping, her hand at her throat. Brandon's guards flooded in, surrounding Thomas, weapons drawn. "Take him," Brandon ordered. "Lock him in the Eastern Holding Facility. I'll deal with him after I finish the other business." Thomas was dragged away, screaming threats and promises of retaliation. Brandon knelt beside Sienna, his hands checking her throat, her face. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she rasped. "You're not fine. He could have killed you. But he didn't, because you were here." She looked up at him. "You're always here." Something shifted in his expression. Something almost vulnerable. "I won't let them hurt you," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." The next target was bigger, more dangerous. Director August Harlow, head of the Crown's Intelligence Division. The man who'd been covering for Thomas and others like him. The man whose corruption ran so deep it threatened the entire kingdom. Brandon couldn't touch him directly. Harlow had protection at the highest levels, royal connections, diplomatic immunity, but Sienna could. She spent 3 days analyzing everything they had on Harlow. Financial records, communications, travel logs, building a picture of a man who'd sold his position piece by piece for offshore accounts and political favors. On the 4th day, she walked into the Crown's headquarters dressed in a cream suit that screamed respectability. Her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked like someone's secretary. Forgettable. She requested a meeting with Director Harlow regarding intelligence leaks in the Northern Territories. He saw her immediately. Curiosity, probably. Or arrogance. The belief that a publicly disgraced consultant posed no threat. His office was all dark wood and expensive art. He sat behind his desk like a king, gesturing for her to sit. "Miss Crawford, I was surprised to receive your request. I thought you'd left the city after your unfortunate situation with the Duke. I'm still here, still working, just more carefully now. And what brings you to my office?" Sienna placed a tablet on his desk, turned it so he could see the screen. "These are copies of your communications with foreign operatives. Dates, amounts, confirmation numbers for wire transfers to accounts in your wife's maiden name." She swiped to the next screen. "This is footage from a security camera showing you meeting with a known enemy agent in a hotel bar. And this," another swipe, "is a signed confession from Thomas Whitmore detailing your involvement in selling state secrets." Harlow's face drained of color. "Where did you get this? Does it matter?" "What matters is I have it. And I have copies stored in 6 different locations with instructions to release everything if anything happens to me or the Duke. This is blackmail. This is insurance." Sienna leaned forward. "You're going to shut down your investigation into the Duke's operations. You're going to recall all agents currently surveilling Northern Territories. And you're going to resign from your position in 3 months, citing health reasons. I could have you arrested. You could try. But the moment I'm in custody, those files go public. Your career ends. Your freedom ends. Your family's reputation ends." She smiled. "Or you could do what I'm asking, retire quietly, and live out your life on that estate you bought with blood money." Harlow stared at her. She watched him calculate, weigh options, realize he had none. "The Duke trained you well," he said finally. "The Duke gave me opportunity. I trained myself." She stood, smoothed her suit. "I'll expect confirmation of the order recalls by tomorrow morning. The resignation letter can wait." But Director Harlow, she paused at the door. If you try anything, if you so much as send someone to follow me home, those files go live. Understood? He nodded. Once, sharp, Sienna walked out of the building, past security, through the gates, and into the waiting carriage where Brandon sat with his arms crossed. How did it go? He'll comply. He's too smart not to. Brandon studied her face. You've changed. You changed me. No. I just showed you what you were capable of. You did the rest. The carriage took them back to the estate. Sienna watched the countryside roll past, feeling something shift inside her. She wasn't the woman who'd kissed a stranger on a dare anymore. She wasn't even the woman who'd killed to protect him. She was something else now. Something harder, more dangerous. The final piece came 2 weeks later. Brandon called her to the estate in the middle of the night. She found him in his study, standing by the window, tension rolling off him in waves. What's wrong? My brother. His voice was flat, empty. June's been feeding information to our enemies. Everything they knew about shipments, about security, about our plans, it all came from him. Sienna's heart sank. Are you sure? I have proof. Communications, bank records, testimony from 3 separate sources. He turned to face her. He's been working against me for over a year. What will you do? Brandon's expression was carved from stone. What I have to do. They drove to the shipyard in silence. The container was unmarked, sitting alone at the far end of the dock. Giune was inside, hands bound, eyes wide with fear when he saw Brandon. Brother, please, let me explain. Explain. Brandon's voice echoed in the metal space. Explain how you sold our family's territory for money. Explain how you gave our enemies the tools to kill our people. They threatened me. They said they'd expose. Expose what? Your gambling debts? Your mistress? You think those things matter compared to treason? Sienna stood near the entrance, watching. This wasn't her moment. This was between brothers, between blood and betrayal. Giune's eyes found hers. Please, make him understand. Make him see reason. Brandon glanced back at her, a question in his eyes. Sienna pulled the folder from her bag. The one containing absolute proof of Giune's crimes. Dates, times, names. All of it meticulously documented. She handed it to Brandon without a word. He opened it. Read. Closed it. You had every chance to stop, Brandon said to his brother. Every chance to come to me, to ask for help. Instead, you chose this. Brandon, please. The shot was single. Clean. Final. Sienna didn't flinch. She watched as Brandon's brother slumped forward, watched as the Duke holstered his weapon, watched as he stood there, shoulders rigid, breathing controlled. Call the disposal team, he said quietly. Sienna made the call. They stood together in the container, surrounded by death and choice, and the weight of what ruling actually meant. I'm sorry, Sienna said. Don't be. He made his choice. I made mine. Brandon looked at her. Could you have done it, if it was someone you loved? I don't know, but I understand why you did. That's why you're still here. That's why you're the only one I trust. He reached out, his hand finding hers. You see what needs to be done, and you don't look away. 6 months passed. The threats ended. The rival territories backed down. The Crown's intelligence division underwent a complete restructuring under new leadership, and Sienna Crawford sat in the throne room of the Northern Estate, wearing midnight blue silk and a crown of silver that marked her as the Duchess of the North. The transformation had been gradual, a title here, a responsibility there, until one day Brandon had knelt before the Northern Council and declared her his equal, his partner, his Duchess. No one objected. No one dared. She'd earned the position through blood and strategy and absolute certainty. The same lords and ladies who'd once whispered about her now bowed. The same society that had shunned her now sought her favor. Brandon entered the throne room, still in his uniform from a day of border inspections. He looked tired, battle-worn, but when his eyes found hers, something softened. "How was the council meeting?" he asked. "Productive. We've established new trade routes through the Eastern Territories. Lord Pemberton tried to argue for reduced tariffs, but I convinced him otherwise." "Convinced?" I reminded him of the encryption keys we still have from his cousin's investigation. He became much more agreeable. Brandon smiled. Actually smiled. "Ruthless. I learned from the best." He climbed the steps to the dais, sat in his throne, and pulled her into his lap. Not proper, not appropriate for a duke and duchess. But here in private, they could be something other than titles and responsibilities. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Any of it?" Sienna thought about the woman she'd been. The one who'd taken a dare at a ball. The one who'd believed she was nobody. "No," she said. "I regret nothing. Not the killing. Not the blackmail. Not becoming exactly what I needed you to be. I didn't become what you needed. I became what I was always capable of being. You just gave me permission to stop pretending otherwise." Brandon's hand traced patterns on her back. "What do you think people say about us? That we're monsters. That we rule through fear. That we're exactly what the North deserves. Are they wrong? No, but they're not completely right either." She turned to look at him. "We protect our people. We make the hard choices. We carry the weight so others don't have to. We're monsters together," he said softly. "Yes," Sienna agreed. "We are." Outside, the sun set over the northern territories, casting long shadows across lands that had known war and betrayal and corruption. But under the Duke and Duchess, under Brandon Lewis and Sienna Crawford, the North stood strong. Untouchable, unbreakable, absolute. Sienna looked out at her kingdom, at the life she'd built from a 3-second kiss and a series of impossible choices, and felt something she'd never experienced before. Certainty. She knew exactly who she was, what she was capable of, what she was willing to do, and she had absolutely no regrets. In the throne room of the North, the Duchess smiled, her hand finding the Duke's, and together they watched the darkness fall. Monsters, perhaps, but they were monsters who ruled with purpose, who protected what was theirs, who never apologized for the blood it took to keep their people safe. And in the end, that was enough. So here we are, at the end of Sienna and Brandon's journey. From a dare to a throne, from nobody to Duchess, from 3 seconds to forever. I want you to know something, these stories. They don't just entertain. They remind us that transformation is possible, that sometimes the most dangerous paths lead to the most powerful destinations, that we're all capable of more than we think, if we're just brave enough to take that first step into the unknown. If you stayed with me through every twist, every betrayal, every impossible choice, thank you. Truly, your time is precious, and you chose to spend it here, with these characters, in this world. That means everything to me. Drop a comment, and tell me what you thought. Did Sienna make the right choices? Could you have done what she did? Would you have taken the dare? I read every single comment, and your thoughts, your reactions, they fuel these stories. They remind me why I do this. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's forgotten they're capable of incredible things. Someone who needs a reminder that monsters aren't always evil. Sometimes they're just people who refuse to be victims anymore. Like this video. Hit that notification bell. Stay with me for what comes next, because I promise you, there are more stories waiting, more impossible choices, more transformations, more proof that we're all so much stronger than we think. Welcome to Forbidden Secret Love Chronicles. Welcome to a family that understands that sometimes love is dangerous, power is earned through blood and sacrifice, and the best stories are the ones that remind us we're capable of anything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying until the end. And thank you for being part of something that matters, stories that don't just entertain, but transform. I'll see you in the next one. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.